Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Buschy McBusch Race 400 at Kansas Speedway on Sunday, May 2nd at around 3 p.m. Eastern. And yes, you did hear me correct. The name of this race is the Buschy McBusch Race 400. This was voted on by the fans. And yes, it's quite a silly name, but I am all for silliness, so I'm a fan of it. I think it's fun to say, and I'm going to be saying it multiple times throughout this video, so you better get used to it. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. And we're getting close to 8,000 subscribers, so if we hit that this weekend, that would be absolutely awesome. So I do appreciate all the support that you guys show me each and every single week. And YouTube tells me around 50% of the people that watch these videos every single week have not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you just want a free way to tell me that you support my content, I appreciate all the hard work you do, Chris. Just hit that subscribe button. I do appreciate that. And if you haven't already, just make sure to turn that notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I go live on weekends or whenever these videos do happen to get posted. And if you want to follow me over on social media, I'm at Pennell16 on Twitter and CPenn16 over on IG. I don't really post much fantasy stuff on my Instagram, but more of a personal account. So if you want to see what video games I play, working out, what I'm eating, all that fun stuff, you can follow me over on IG and hit me up over there. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that. But if you are interested, don't sign up today because I'm recording this on Friday and it's the end of the month. Wait until Saturday, May 1st, because I want you guys to get double charged, because if you guys don't know how Patreon works, they'll charge you when you sign up or at the beginning of the month. So wait until the 1st, and that's the best bang for your buck because you get a full month of content. So if you are interested, just wait until Saturday, but I got a ton of extra content on there that I do put a lot of extra work into each and every single week. And you can join the community. We have several hundred members over there, and it's always a great time. You can join the Discord community. You get projections, optimizer, ownership projections. You can make 150 lineups, do groups, all that fun stuff, export it right to DraftKings. Got rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets. Like I mentioned, the Discord community, which is always a fun time. No one is mean in there. We'll be in there to help you. You can just come in, do jokes. It's mainly just jokes and having fun in there, but we do talk some NASCAR DFS as well. It's always a great time on race days. And even if you don't want the extra content, you just want to join the Discord chat to hit us up, I got options for that as well. So just hit the link down below and join the community of several hundred DFS members. And we've been taking down contests, it seems like, the majority of the week so far this year. So I feel like the projections have been pretty good. So if you want to check it out, it's all available there, and you get everything on the spreadsheet, which has got like 30-some tabs here if you are interested. So I think that's kind of it for the shameless plug. So without further ado, let's dive into the preview of this week's race. And as per usual, before we get into the actual preview, I got to do a little bit of housekeeping, and I'll give you guys some life updates as well, even though nobody asked, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So first off, I just finished college, so I can finally do this full time now. I no longer have to do college and this at the same time. I'm going to be graduating next weekend. I think it's May 8th or May 9th. So after that, I will be officially done, and I can do content creation full-time here over on YouTube and Patreon. So I do appreciate the people that do make that possible, every single one of you that are watching this video. And also, me and my lovely girlfriend are looking to move to Florida, southwestern Florida, around the Fort Myers, Sarasota, Tampa Bay area. We're going to look at apartments kind of right after I graduate. So we're going to fly down there. So if anyone has any recommendations of what to do, where to eat while I'm there for about a week, please let me know down in the comments, or if you guys have any recommendations of the best places to live down there, you can let me know as well, because I'm an open book and I don't really know much about Florida. I just know the weather is nice and everything looks wonderful down there, so that's something I am really looking forward to, so wish me luck in there. And if you want to catch me live this weekend, I'll be right on this channel. I'm thinking around 1 p.m. Eastern is probably a good time because the race starts at 3. I originally thought it started at 2, so if you looked at my content schedule spreadsheet, I said live stream at 12, but I'm thinking 1 p.m. is probably a good time for that, so you can expect me to be live then. 12:30, 1 o'clock, just make sure you're there. We always have a good time in the live streams. And if you want to join the DraftKings contest that I host each and every single week, please comment your DK username down below. It's just a good way for me to interact with you guys every single week. First 100 people that join will get to enter the contest, compete for a prize if you make the top 3, and you get a free shout out on the channel as well. So all you gotta do is comment your DK username, say something nice with it, don't really care, and I will send that invite. And the first 98 people, I guess, that join will be able to enter the contest. But I do want to shout out the winners from last week, so I'll throw it on the screen right about now. But coming in first place, taking home the golden around $100, was Fat Daddy Rabbit. Like the username, and also I think it was his first week playing, so he's 1 for 1 right now, and he took it down 309.5 points. Had a very good Super Speedway lineup, so shout out to Fat Daddy Rabbit. You also always get bonus points from me if you have Ryan Blaney in your lineup. And C Davis 07, bunch of numbers. I feel like this is like the 20th time he's been in the top 3. So shout out to you once again for having another really good lineup. Cleveland 27, shout out to Cleveland 27 because I am from that area. So just had the Browns draft last night. I think we got a good corner, but yeah, shout out to you. And then right on the bubble, we had Mengele 2, Brutus 3, Legend 58, September 9, and then Zwint rounding out 8th, and Commish 371, 9th, and then Cool Breeze 6566 rounding out the top 10 to show. Shout out to you guys for finishing the top 10%, and a double shout out to the guys and gals that finished inside the top 3. But I think that's it for the housekeeping, so let's get into the actual preview portion of this video. And like I mentioned earlier, this is the Buschy McBusch Race 400 that does not get old. There's your outline of the track. This is Kansas Speedway. It's an intermediate track, just a mile and a half. So, you know, we have so many of these on the series. Now, it's a lower tire wear one, so it's not as comparable to tracks like Atlanta and Homestead than it is to like Charlotte, Texas, like the lower tire wear 1.5 is also Las Vegas. I'm probably forgetting one off the top of my head, but yeah, it's just your prototypical 1.5 mile track with not a lot of tire wear, 267 laps as per usual, which means about 186.9, yeah, I think I'm reading that right, 186.9 diameter points available. So yeah, I mean, we're going to want about 2 or 3 of these guys per lineup. Now, the way the lineup's constructed, or I should say the starting grid is constructed this week, it's going to make roster construction a bit wonky because I think our lineups are going to look a little bit plate racy like last week. But with the way plate racing is last week, we had a lot of good cars finish in the back. So the way the starting formula is constructed, these guys are going to be starting in the rear, and they're pretty much the best drivers at these track types. Yes, we have a couple stragglers starting near the front that are going to be good dominator plays, but don't be too shocked if your lineups are looking a bit plate racy this week, and I think that's totally fine because I was looking at some previous optimal lineups at Kansas, and we've had instances where there's a ton of good cars starting in the back, and the optimal lineups kind of look like a Talladega or Daytona race. Now, not where you're using a bunch of scrubs like Josh Bilicki and BJ McLeod, but like a lot of guys, good cars starting in the back that do happen to make the optimal lineups. So these guys can still work their way through the field in lead laps. So this is kind of like the roster construction standpoint. We'll talk about in the driver by driver breakdown a little bit because as you're going to see, there's a lot of good place differential drivers that are like high tier kind of drivers like Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin. Those guys are all starting in the rear, so we definitely have to put them in consideration this week. But yeah, we're looking at probably 2 to 3 studs per lineup, and it's not that hard to build lineups this week because the pricing overall is kind of soft. Yeah, there's some expensive drivers, but there's a couple drivers I think they kind of missed a bit on pricing that is going to make building lineups quite easy. So I think that's kind of it for the preview. Nothing too special. Just, again, prototypical mile and a half intermediate track, similar to, you know, Charlotte, Las Vegas, those lower tire wear 1.5s. Yes, we can look at some of the Atlanta and Homestead data because we ran races in specific tracks this season. It's a 1.5, so we can look at how drivers have performed at those tracks, but just no tire wear, you know, not exactly as comparable as I'd like it to be, but at least some data points that we can look at to try to see who's going to at least unload a fast car this weekend's race. Being said, I think we can get out of the preview here and get to the driver by driver breakdown portion of this video. And as I was saying earlier, guys, there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of good place differential plays here. Just looking at the 10K and up range, the highest starting spot here is Truex and 15th. And on a lot of race days, Truex and 15th would look like one of probably the better plays because he'd be starting further back than most of the drivers. But with the way Talladega works, that is not the case. So loads of good place differential plays. And I know what you're probably thinking, we have 267 laps, so don't we need guys starting up front to dominate? Yes, but these guys are probably, one of these guys is definitely going to dominate at some point, at least most likely. I shouldn't say definitely, but I'd say most likely one of these guys is going to dominate at some point and probably end up winning the race outside of a Ryan Blaney or Brad Keselowski, maybe even a Kevin Harvick as well. But the laps that don't lead early on, because I know you're going to be missing out on the early dominator points, it might be best to roster one of these guys with the guys starting close to the front in tournaments and cash games. I would just go strictly place differential, to be honest, because the laps that don't lead early on, they can make up for that on the place differential points they accumulate working their way through the field. If we take Kyle Larson, for example, and let's look at the heat map here, which gives you an idea of how many points a driver would score without any dominator points. So let's say going all the way down to Kyle Larson here, starting in 30 seconds. So let's say he finishes top 3, which at a 1.5 mile track this season, I don't think that's out of the equation. So let's assume Kyle Larson gets absolutely 0 dominator points today. I don't think that's something you should expect to happen, but let's just, under this assumption, say 0 dominator points. He would get you 70 points if he happened to finish 3rd. And I'm assuming Kyle Larson's probably going to lead laps at some point. I would say he's one of the favorites to win this race. If I had to pick someone to win the race, I actually think I do have Kyle Larson with the best projected average finish here for today, or Sunday, I should say. I keep saying today. And I'd assume he's going to get some fast laps as well. So if you think Kyle Larson's going to get a top 5, we're looking at around 65 to 70 some fantasy points, and you got to throw in those dominator points as well. They're going to accumulate throughout the day. So I guess speaking about Kyle Larson, we'll start with him first. $11,300 starting all the way back in 32nd. I don't see how you don't play him in cash games this weekend. I know he's really expensive, but like I said, the pricing is kind of soft this week. You can get a lot of place differential guys, and there's some cheap drivers that I feel like are a bit underpriced as well. So you shouldn't have any issues fitting in Kyle Larson, and he's been the best driver at the 1.5-mile tracks this season. I was looking at my power rankings, which is just kind of algorithm based on the numbers that I have in my spreadsheet. He is my #1 ranked 1.5-mile track driver so far this season. Again, we're working with a small sample size of 3 races, but he's been absolutely incredible. So if we look specifically at the 2021 season, 106.9 DraftKings points per race, average finish of 2.3, running position of 3.2, the best drive rating by a ton. As of when he's finished in the top 5 each and every single time, the most laps led by a lot. A lot of that's coming from Atlanta, which I know is a lot different tire wear than Kansas, but it's still a 1.5-mile track. And he was good at Las Vegas as well. He did win that race, and he was probably going to win Atlanta until Joey Logano ended up throwing that block on him at the end when he was going a lap down and let Ryan Blaney win, although Ryan Blaney still had a fast car, so I'm not discrediting him whatsoever. But he did get some help there from his teammate, and 60 fast laps per race as well. So I have nothing bad to say about Kyle Larson. He jumps off the page to me in my projections, and I would assume most people that do projections would have Kyle Larson graded out very well as well. So in cash games, I'm pretty much locking in Kyle Larson. Don't see why you get away from him. You get a ton of place differential upside, and if he doesn't wreck today, I would be very shocked if he doesn't get you 70-plus points, to be honest. He should be I know last week he had the engine issue at Talladega, but that's just an absolute fluke incident. And the week before that at Richmond, he just kind of sucked. But putting those behind us, Kyle Larson has pretty much had the best car of the season. The move to the 5 car has been absolutely incredible for him. And even in the 42 car in the past here, he's actually averaging the most DraftKings points per race. And keep in mind, that was in the Chip Ganassi car, averaging 75.4 DraftKings points per race, 2 top 5s, 40.3 laps led per race, 27 fast laps. And he's had multiple instances where he starts near the back of the field at Kansas, like I was mentioning earlier at the previous optimal lineups. Larson's one of those guys that's been in the optimal lineup and he's starting near the rear, and he's been just fine, averaging 15 place differential spots per race. So he's shown that he's able to move through the field here. And now that he's in the 5 car, I think the ceiling's the limit. So you can definitely sign me up for a ton of Kyle Larson. Pretty much the top play on the entire slate for me. Looking at Joey Logano here, $11,100, starting a few spots further up from Kyle Larson. So if you had to pick between the two, I would go with Larson just because you get the extra couple of spots, and he's just been so good. But Logano's right up there with him as being an excellent play. And if you can play both, if you can fit them both in your lineup in cash games, I think that's obviously an excellent way to go. But it's been a good track for him. He won the most recent race here. And then in the 2020 spring race, he had an issue where he finished 35th. So these numbers are going to be a bit skewed because of that race, because you should normally figure Joey Logano is going to finish inside the top 10 at a 1.5-mile track. He's got one of the best cars in the field, but 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 30.7 laps led per race, which I believe is the 4th most. Not a ton of fast laps, which I don't like it when guys have a lot of laps led and not many fast laps, but hey, he's just one of those guys that can always get up front and potentially dominate a race. And looking at the track type form, yeah, it's Logano at 1.5. I mean, the numbers are obviously fine. So far this season, though, at these track types, hasn't really gone his way. Average finish of 16.3, running position at 12.7, no top 5s, only 1 top 10, 2 top 15s. I would assume those numbers are going to change a bit after this race. I would assume he's going to have a top 10 contention here, and starting all the way back in 29th, do think he's an excellent option. I just worry about him having any dominator upside, because I feel like Kyle Larson's more likely to dominate, so is Denny Hamlin, then Elliott. I'd say he's right on par with Bowman in terms of dominator potential. Then Martin Truex Jr. might be the most likely guy to lead laps at some point because he's starting the furthest up and he's been excellent this season. So I do worry about the dominator potential for Joey Logano, but obviously starting in 29th, I'm going to at least have a decent chunk of him because I can't pass up that place differential upside, and he's the most recent winner here. Then Denny Hamlin, $10,800. He's starting in 20th. I do want to mention that last year's races had quite different temperatures. So in the summer race, I say spring here, but COVID messed up the schedule, but in the first race, it was very hot at Kansas. In the second race, it was freezing cold. So keep that in mind. I would assume this race is going to be closer to the summer race because it's not going to be absolutely frigid in Kansas. So maybe you want to lean towards those numbers more so than the fall race. But even then, Joey Logano had an issue, so I wouldn't really put too much stock into that. But Denny Hamlin, he won the spring-summer race, whatever you want to call it, and he also had back-to-back wins from 2019 in the fall race and 2020 in the spring/summer race. I'll try to say summer, but you guys get the idea. Summer, spring. It was warm in that first race that we had at Kansas, and Denny Hamlin was excellent. If Kyle Larson doesn't win this race, I feel like Denny Hamlin has a really good shot at it. He's got 2 wins here, 3 top 5s, the second most laps led, good amount of fast laps, average finish of 8.7. I mean, as Denny Hamlin, he's been one of the best drivers in the field this season. He's been a dominator at most tracks we've gone to. 2 top 5s at these track types this year, average finish of 6.3, which is only behind Busch, Byron, and Kyle Larson right now. Also 24.7 laps left per race, which is tied for third with Brad Keselowski. So yeah, I like Denny Hamlin a lot, starting 20th to get that place differential upside. I'm going to be curious to see what his ownership is going to be because he's starting 9 spots further up from Logano and 12 spots further up from Kyle Larson. So I'm wondering if a lot of people will just go Larson and Logano just to lock up that place differential. But to be honest, I think Hamlin's a much more likely dominator play than Joey Logano. So I might lean towards Hamlin over Logano, even though he's starting further up. I just feel like he's more likely to dominate. So that's very close. So you're splitting hairs between those guys. I would probably lean Hamlin in tournaments and Logano in cash games, but I don't think you can go wrong with either. I'm not sure you're going to be able to play all three. If you can, excellent, but that might be pushing it a little bit. And then Chase Elliott, $10,400. He's starting 17th, and to be honest, I've played a lot of Chase Elliott this year, and it's just kind of hurting my bankroll because he just hasn't really done anything so far. Like this season at the 1.5, it's not been good at all. I know he's had some issues some races that he can't really control, but an average finish at 21.7, running position of 15.1, no top 5s, no top 10s, and only 2 top, well, I only say only 2 top 20s. There's only been 3 races, but 0 top 10s is a big issue for me because Chase Elliott's a guy that you need to get up front, lead laps, dominate, and contend for a win. He just really hasn't done that this year, only averaging 8.7 laps left per race and 9.7 fast laps. Yes, his luck is going to change at some point, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens here at Kansas. This is a good track for him. Average finish of 6.2, which is the best in the entire field. He has a win, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and decent amount of laps led and fast laps. So I really don't have any concerns with Chase Elliott. It's just starting 17th. He's not going to grade out as well from his performance this season at the 1.5s, and he doesn't have as much place differential upside as guys like Hamlin, Bowman that he's priced right in between. So more of a tournament play for me, but if you're going to want to get different this week, because there's going to be a lot of ownership, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of ties. So if you want to get different, targeting the drivers that are expensive but starting closer to the front is a good way to do that because they do have similar upside, and they're starting closer to the front, so their path to dominating is just a little bit easier, and they don't have to work their way through as much traffic. Then Alex Bowman, $10,200. He is starting 25th. I know I'm president of the Ryan Blaney fan club, but I want to apply as vice president for the Alex Bowman fan club because I've been playing him and pretty much been overweight on him almost every single week, and the guy's been great. I know he's had a couple races where he's running great, then he ends up having an issue, and it kind of kills his day, but he's been looking awesome this season in the 48 car, and starting all the way back in 25th. I believe he had an average finish of 5.5 at this track last year, if we look at the recent finishes. So 3rd and 8th, if we divide that by 2, 11 by 2, 5.5. So he's finished 3rd last year in the fall race and 8th in the summer race. And even then, he's had some really good numbers at Kansas. He finished 11th, 2nd, 9th, and 18th was his worst finish in the past 6 races here. And it's been a good track, like I said. Average finish of 8.5, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s. I'm not sure if he's going to be a dominator starting this far back, but I believe it was Richmond where he started 24th, right? And then he ended up winning that race, although he got a bit lucky at the end of the restart, but might be looking good sometimes. But he set himself up for success. I don't want to call it a lucky win, but he was excellent all day long, showed a ton of speed, even had that penalty where he had to go to the back near the end of the race, ended up working his way back up, had that restart, ended up winning the race. And he was one of the drivers I was most overexposed to compared to the field that day, so definitely shout out to Alex Bowman there. But yeah, starting 25th, I think he's an excellent place differential play, and I think he's just fine in cash games, because if you can't go Larson Logano because of the price point, I have no issues at all going Larson and Bowman in cash this week. He's just been great this year. The Chevys have looked good so far this season at the 1.5s. Alex Bowman is sitting at a running position of 8.5, average finish of 13th at 1 top 5 and 2 top 10s. So yeah, you can sign me up for some Alex Bowman in all formats this weekend. Martin Truex Jr., $10,000, starting in 15th. If Truex is going to go overlooked this weekend because of his starting spot compared to the other guys, because starting 15th doesn't look as great as the guys starting 25th, 17th, 20th, 29th, 32nd, you can sign me up for other Truex I can get in tournaments, because the guy's been excellent this year, and $10,000 for Truex starting in 15th. I know relative to the rest of the guys, but if this was just a regular slate with not all these place differential guys, Truex 15th starting at $10,000, I mean, I'd probably be writing up as one of the best cash game plays on the slate, because the guy just owns 1.5 mile tracks, and he's been great this year. He's been one of the best drivers in the field. Average finish of 7.3 here at Kansas, 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s. He's been a lap leader. He's been a fast laps guy. Looking at his actual finishes, 9th, 3rd, 6th, 19th, which isn't great, but then 5th and 2nd. And going to this season specifically, average finish of 6, which is right on par with Kyle Busch and only behind William Byron and Kyle Larson. Also has a top 5, 3 top 10s, and he's been a lap leader and fast lap guy as well. So I definitely like Truex a lot in tournaments. I'm really hoping that starting spot relative to the other guys he's priced around makes him go a bit overlooked. Then hopping out of place differential paradise for a little bit, we got a couple Penske teammates here starting close to the front, and Brad Keselowski in the pole at $9,700, and Ryan Blaney at $9,500 starting in 7th. And I think these guys are fine tournament plays. Typically, if Keselowski was on the pole, we didn't have all these place differential guys, I would say he's an excellent cash game play because of that price point, because he is a little bit lower price than what we've grown to expect the past couple of weeks. Because I know DraftKings in the beginning of the season was really pricing down those guys starting on the pole. They kind of got away from that a little bit, but now we're back to that because there's just so many good place differential guys, and you can't make everyone 10K or above. It's going to be hard to make lineups. So Keselowski on the pole at Kansas, I think he's a fine GPP dominator to pair with the guy starting further in the back, because the name of the game, I think, this week is going to be a lot of these place differential guys that can work their way through the field and get dominator points at some point. But if Keselowski can hold his own, lead an entire stage, and even contend for the win or just hang around for like stage 1 and 2, I mean, he'll probably be in the optimal lineup if he leads that many laps. If he can lead 100 laps today, yeah. As long as he finishes inside the top 10, I would say he's going to be optimal today, assuming like there's not two place differential guys that lead a large chunk of laps as well. So I can get behind some Keselowski in tournaments. This has been a good track for him. One of the best average finishes in the field, 3 top 5s, which is tied for the most with multiple other drivers, and I'm not going to just mention all of them. He's been a lap leader in the past. And Keselowski's just a sturdy driver at these track types. I believe last season he had the best average finish at the 1.5 mile tracks. Now, that didn't come with a ton of dominator points. I have to double check that. It might have been Blaney. But I know he had one of the best average finishes in the field at the 1.5s. But, I mean, nothing bad to say about him. He's in great equipment in the Penske car. I mean, he won the race last week, which has no meaning at all to this week. But at least it's some momentum for Brad Keselowski. And just the overall numbers here at Kansas are pretty good for him. So I have no issues at all with wanting to play Brad in tournaments. I realize you might be tempted to go there in cash games, but I just want to go straight place differential because if Keselowski just does not happen to lead laps early on, there's no chance he's going to be optimal on the pole, especially with all the place differential that we have. So it's a somewhat risky play because we know how the pole setter has gone in DFS in the COVID era, besides the couple weeks ago with Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. That happened to work out, but Truex is like the one guy I would not be afraid to play in the pool, and obviously we saw that at Richmond because he's just one of those guys that's really easy to trust. Like, I don't know, he just doesn't seem to screw up too much, so... Anyway, Keselowski, fine tournament play, but not going to go there in cash games because of that starting spot. Ryan Blaney, $9,500 starting in 7th. You guys already know. You already know I love Ryan Blaney this week in tournaments. He's just been the best driver at the 1.5 mile track since the COVID era started, really. He's been just fantastic. He has the best average green flag speed. I was looking at this week's specific tire combination, which I saw from my guy Jordan on Twitter. He always tweets that out, so I do appreciate him tweeting out that information. Then I plug it in my spreadsheet and then pop up the averages. And Ryan Blaney, he had the fastest average green flag speed in that tire combination. I believe it's like Kansas, Texas, Charlotte, then the other Kansas race. And it's kind of like the low tire wear 1.5s for the most part. Ryan Blaney was up there, Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr. Those are like your top 4 fast at these in this tire combination. I think Kevin Harvick was in the top 5 as well. But I mean, what's there bad to say about Ryan Blaney? This is a good track for him. Not finish-wise, it's not a good track, but if you look at the average running position, it's quite the difference here from finish and average running position. So as you can see, he's got one of the best running positions in the field at 7.7. I believe it's only behind Kevin Harvick. Yeah, only behind Kevin Harvick with an average finish of 20.7, 0 top 5s, and only 2 top 10 finishes. He just keeps having issues where he runs really well, but he doesn't get good finishes. But assuming that's going to change, I can definitely get behind some Ryan Blaney in tournaments because that low of a price point of Ryan Blaney at a 1.5 mile track, especially a low tire wear 1.5 mile track, he also has a win at this track type so far this season, so I got nothing bad at all to say about Ryan Blaney here. He's been one of my favorite guys, if not my favorite guy to roster at these track types, and I don't think that's going to change here anytime soon. Looking at the past 17 races at the 1.5s, Ryan Blaney's got the best average running position, one of the best driver ratings, I think only behind Kyle Larson, and it's only a 5 race sample size. So if you take that out, Ryan Blaney has the best driver rating, 8 top 5 finishes, which is only behind Kyle Busch, and just some overall really elite numbers. So I definitely like Ryan Blaney in tournaments. Would not go there in cash games, but I think he's an excellent tournament play because people are going to be so enamored with the place differential guys. Guys like Ryan Blaney should get a little bit overlooked, and I don't think that should be the case. Because if he comes out, leads a bunch of laps, and finishes top 5, he will be optimal, even though he does not have all that place differential upside. Then Kurt Busch, $93. He's starting in 28th. I mean, typical Kurt Busch is usually a top 10 guy at these kind of track types. Look, if we look at his numbers at Kansas and you take out that 38th place finish last season, which is going to skew these numbers a little bit, he's got finishes of 9th, 4th, 7th, 18th, and 8th. So for the most part, when he doesn't have issues, I'll expect Kurt Busch to be a top 10 guy. And starting all the way back in 28th at $9,300, I think he's an excellent cash game play to play alongside maybe a Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Kurt Busch combo. If you can make that fit, I think that's a very, very good way to go. But you don't have to play those 3. You can go with Bowman, Larson, Kurt Busch if you just want to go pure PD, Kyle Larson, Logano, Kurt Busch, but definitely think he's a very, very, very strong cash game play this weekend. Then Kevin Harvick, $9,100. He's starting in 4th. He could be a guy that leads early on because really the only guys I would expect to lead laps early would be Keselowski, Blaney, Kevin Harvick, and William Byron. I'm not sure Kyle Busch will be fast enough early on. I feel like at the end of the race, because he kind of has to use the early portion of the race as practice because he's the guy that likes to fine-tune his car, and you don't have that luxury anymore of practice until next year. So he kind of uses the early portion of the race to get the car fixed in. So I wouldn't say he's going to be an early lap leader, but guys like Byron, Harvick, Blaney, Keselowski would be the guys I would say are most likely because I can't see MDB or Austin Dillon leading laps. I know Michael McDowell's up there as well, and we know he's going to drop like a rock more than likely. So those are like your early on potential lap leaders. And Kevin Harvick, I know Richmond's a different aero package and definitely a different track type, but he looked good in that race. He actually showed some speed, which was encouraging to see. And at some point, Kevin Harvick's going to break out here and dominate a race and win. I'm not so sure it's going to be this week. We kind of have to take a wait-and-see approach with Kevin Harvick because until we see it, it's going to be hard to believe because we don't have practice, and they just seem to have lost their edge that they had last season. And the Stewart-Haas cars overall have just been really, really slow this season, but this is a very, very good track for him. The most laps led, the most fast laps, the best drive rating, best average finish, best running position, second most DraftKings points, has a win, 3 top 5s. Looking at his numbers last year, he was a dominator. He's finished 2nd and 4th, so he's good at both temperatures, whether it was hot or cold. So Harvick's a sneaky play here at $9,100. It's going to be really hard to trust him, but I'm going to play a little bit of Kevin Harvick just because one of these weeks it's going to happen. I don't want to completely miss the boat. And at $9,100, I mean, it's a really good price point. I realize this year he should probably be like a 7K driver because he sucked, but I'm willing to buy into a little bit of Kevin Harvick just in case he happens to be one of those early lap leaders and can hang on for the top 5 finish. Because at some point, guys, it's going to happen this year. Now, without practice or anything, I don't really know exactly when, but he's going to start trending in the right direction. You want to be ahead of the curve and not get left behind on that. And with that being said, I'm still not overly confident in Kevin Harvick, but I just want a little bit just in case he happens to have one of those breakout days. Then dropping down to the 8K range, William Byron, $8,800 starting in 2nd. I know it feels kind of weird wanting to play William Byron starting 2nd at nearly $9,000, but he's been excellent this year. Like, it's time to start treating William Byron as a real top shelf kind of driver. He's in Hendrick Motorsports, and their cars have been excellent so far this season. I realize he's young, so it's kind of hard to put him in that Chase Elliott, Truex kind of category. I wouldn't say he's quite there yet, but he's been racing exceptional this season. I know this isn't that great of a track for him, but if we just look at this year specifically at the 1.5s, he's one of the best drivers in the field so far. He's averaging nearly 70 DraftKings points per race, average finish of 5.7, running position right on par with that. Has a win that took place at Homestead this year, which I realize is a higher tire wear track, so it doesn't really translate super well to Kansas, but still, it's nice to see him win at this kind of track type. He has 3 top 10s, 43 laps left per race, and 23 fast laps. If you don't like Keselowski, a direct pivot is William Byron if you think he can get around Keselowski early on. And if he leads like the entire stage 1, I mean, $8,800. If we can get some diamond points out of William Byron, he hangs around for like a top 5, top 6 finish, that might be just enough to make optimal depending on how the dominoes fall in these place differential guys. So I do like having a little bit of William Byron in tournaments, even though his overall numbers aren't super impressive. But if we look at exact, like specific numbers from last season, besides the early portion of his career where he finished 33rd, 38th, and 20th, the past 3 races here, he's finished 5th, 10th, and 8th. So I don't think it's out of the equation to think he's going to be a top 5, top 6 guy today with how well he's been running this season. So I can get behind some William Byron in tournaments. He's a very risky play starting 2nd with all the place differential we have on Sunday, but I do think he's worth having a little bit of ownership too. Kyle Busch, $8,600. He's starting 9th. $8,600 for Kyle Busch. When I first look at the salaries, I completely missed them here. I was just looking down, and then someone mentioned, did you see Kyle Busch was $8,600? I was like, what? I must have missed him. I looked back, I was like, man, no kidding. I was thinking maybe they meant Kurt Busch, but $8,600 for Kyle Busch. I realize it's the COVID era, and Kyle Busch isn't the same kind of driver, but man, this is a real cheap price point on KB here, and I might have to buy in a little bit because he doesn't necessarily have to come out and dominate a bunch of this race to be a fine play. If he can be a top 5 guy, $8,600 with a little bit of place differential points, that's not the worst thing out there. So I'll be playing some Kyle Busch in tournaments. Wouldn't go there in cash games, obviously. I'd much rather get some place differential guys, and I feel like my lineups will be a little bit top heavy there. So I'm not sure I'm going to get too much into this 8K range, but obviously this is a good track for him. Pretty much every track we go to in the past has been a good track for Kyle Busch. It's just these days he hasn't really put up the dominator points that you need for him to pay off his price point. But at $8,600, you don't necessarily need all those points. And looking at how he did last year at this track type, which is probably the, not track type I should say, but at Kansas without having practice, it wasn't that bad. He finished 5th and 11th. And remember the one race, he was actually a lap leader, and I'm pretty sure he made the optimal lineup. And if we look at how he's done this season at the 1.5s, it's not that bad, actually. He's got one of the best average finishes of 6th, 2 top 5 finishes. He's been in the top 10 each and every single time. Hasn't been a lap leader, but he does have 8 fast laps per race, which I guess is one positive. And he's been able to work his way through the field, averaging 13 place differential spots per race as well. Now he's going to have track position on his side. There's a small chance he could be an early lap leader. It's just I can't view Kyle Busch as a dominator these days. Until we get practice back next year, I just have a hard time viewing him as a dominator outside of a track like Bristol, which we saw. Besides Bristol, he did dominate and win that Texas race, but that was kind of an outlier for the most part. But he did get his win, which we were all kind of wondering if he was finally going to go winless. Did not happen. But $8,600 for Kyle Busch, I can get a little bit of him in tournaments for sure. I mean, it's just a real hard price point to pass up for a guy with his kind of talent. Then dropping down to Aric Almirola here, he starts double the spots further back than Kyle Busch, $200 cheaper. I think he's a fine, somewhat of a place differential play. It's probably more of a hybrid of place differential / finishing position upside, because I do think he could be a top 12, top 15 guy. It's just really hard to trust these Stewart-Haas cars right now. I know he had that really good run at Richmond, but again, different aero package, much different track type. It was nice to see him at least have a little bit of momentum there, but it's going to be a little bit hard to trust Almirola because his numbers at the 1.5s this year, pretty bad. 3.3 DraftKings points per race, average finish at 29th. I realized he had the issue the one race. I believe that's when he got into it with Ryan Blaney. Average running position of 22.3. It's not much better though. Drive rating of 54.6 and only one top 20 finish. I do have some concerns with Almirola. I think where he's starting makes him somewhat viable in his track history at Kansas. At least a little bit encouraging, but it's kind of just a middle of the road play for me. Not super excited, not super down on him either. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., $8,200, starting 23rd. If normally, if Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the past was $8,200, I would just completely gloss over him unless this was a super speedway. But the way he's been running this season, I think it's definitely deserved. He's been great. He doesn't have a DNF this year. He didn't even DNF at the Talladega race, even though he kind of smashed the wall there. He's still running. It just didn't. Obviously, he had to go some laps down. Didn't end up working in his favor, but he's been great this year. I don't think he's finished outside the top 20 besides last week, and we're looking at his numbers this season at the 1.5. It's pretty good. He's been in the top 15 every single time. He's got an average finish at 12th, running position of 14.9, and the JTG cars haven't been terrible this year, so I can get behind some Ricky Stenhouse. The price point makes it where you're not going to want to play him too much, and I can't imagine I'm going to land on too much Stenhouse. I'll have a little bit of exposure to him just because of the starting spot and the way he's been running this year, because he could realistically gain you like 10 spots in this race, and that's not the worst thing in the world. It's just paying that much for Stenhouse never feels great, but the way that he's been running this season, I do think it might be just a little bit worth it. And if you're looking at his numbers, they are skewed a little bit because of that 40th place finish last year in the summer race, so kind of have to look past that, but I think Stenhouse is an okay play. Don't like the price point, but the way he's been running this year, I think it's deserved. Christopher Bell, $8,000. He is starting in 8th. I think he's a fine PD play. He does have top 10 upside, and in the 20 car has been very good here at Kansas, because if we look at Erik Jones' numbers, who's only $200 cheaper than him, he had an average finish of 7.7 here at Kansas, running position of 10.5, 3 top 5 finishes, and 5 top 10s. I think you can make the argument that Christopher Bell is better than Erik Jones. Bell can put up some Erik Jones numbers here, maybe even a little bit better. I think he's a fine tournament play, because with everyone going to place differential, and he's right in between 2 PD plays and Stenhouse and Erik Jones, I feel like he's going to have very, very low ownership this week, and I wouldn't hate taking a stab at some Christopher Bell. He also finished 10th here last year, and you got to keep in mind that was in the 95 car, now in the 20 car. I mean, there's legit top 5 potential here. If you're looking at his numbers this season at the 1.5s, he does have a top 10 finish. Overall, the numbers haven't been amazing, but I could get behind some Christopher Bell in tournaments this weekend, but not too much exposure, but just a little bit, because I do think there's a little bit of upside there for Bell. Then dropping down to the guy we were just talking about a little bit, Erik Jones, $7,800. He is starting in 27th, so he's a fine PD play this weekend. Now, people don't look into anything, don't realize he's in a new car, and they just look specifically at a stat sheet. They're going to say Erik Jones is the best player in the world, which I would agree with them if he was still in the 20 car. Not the case anymore. He's now in the 43 car, which is obviously a big downgrade in equipment, so instead of having top 5 upside like Erik Jones showed in the past here at Kansas, we're probably looking at top 15 upside. I'd say he's probably going to finish anywhere from 15th to like 22nd place, which is fine starting 27th. I just wish he was a little bit cheaper, but if you're looking for a cash game guy, I think Erik Jones is totally viable. Hopefully that success that he had in the 20 car can at least carry over a little bit to the 43 car. I'd assume he's going to put up better numbers than Bubba did. If you look at Bubba Wallace's numbers in the 43 car here at Kansas, nothing crazy, 18, 37, 35th issues there, then 29, 26, 23rd. if Bubba can finish 18th, I feel like Eric Jones can at least compete for like a 15th to 20th place finish, which is just fine. If you look at the heat map for Eric Jones, if he happened to finish, let's look at 15th to 20th place here. So get the Jones here, we plug in 15th, that'd be 40 points, and then we could range from around, I think 30 to 40 points is a viable range for Eric Jones. Even if you think he finishes like 22nd, 23rd, we're looking at mid to upper 20s, which isn't great at that price point, but I do think since this has been a great track for him in the past, that at least some of that success can carry over, even though he's in lesser equipment. Because besides the last year in the 20th place finish, he's been 5th, 7th, 3rd, 4th, 7th, an absolute machine here. Again, big downgrade and coming in the 43 car, but I do think Eric Jones could realistically gain you close to 10 spots in this race, which is just fine. He's a nice, safe floor play for the most part. Then MDB, $7,700. He is starting in 5th. I usually like playing MDB, but I can't do it this week. I might have zero exposure to him, to be honest. Maybe I'll have like a very light sprinkle of MDB just in case craziness happens, but outside of craziness, I don't see how MDB is going to work here. I mean, his numbers are fine for when he's starting in the teens or the 20s, but starting 5th, I mean, if he was cheaper, maybe just don't try to hold on to a top 10, but I can't see that happening. Same goes for Austin Dillon. I typically love Austin Dillon at 1.5 mile tracks, but you're just starting so far up, and can you really expect MDB and Austin Dillon to finish above guys like Chase Elliott, Blaney, Keselowski, Larson? I can't. I think they're going to lose spots here, and I'd much rather go elsewhere this week. So unless you're playing 150 lineups like I do, maybe I have like 1 to 2% of these guys just in case, but they're probably wasted lineups, to be honest. Ryan Newman, $7,400. He's starting 14th. He's kind of just an in play for the most part. Like, I don't love it. He hasn't been bad this year at the 1.5s, though the Roush cars really haven't been terrible, kind of like the JTG cars, but so far this season at 1.5, he's got an average finish of 12.7, running position of 15.6, top 10, 2 top 15s, and 3 top 20s. Maybe you play a little bit of Ryan Newman, but I don't have much hope for him here. Same with Bubba Wallace, even though he's in the 23 car, it just hasn't been good for him yet. Average finish of 22, running position of 23rd, driver rating 59, and 1 top 20 finish. He's not performed up to expectations yet in that 23 car, and it's kind of disappointing because I've expected more now. I would cut him a little bit slack here because he's on a new team, and COVID, you don't really have time to put in too much time in the shop and practice and things like that. So I'll cut him a bit of a break there. I think next year will be a better indicator of what we can expect to see in future seasons in the 23 car. But right now, it's not looking that great for Bubba. Cole Custer, $7,100, starting 10th. He's just starting a little bit too far up for me. I know last year he wasn't bad at Kansas. He finished 7th and 14th, which is just fine. I mean, that's acceptable for a guy like Cole Custer, but the way the Stewart Haas cars have struggled this season and he's starting so far up, if he was cheaper, if he was like in the low 6K range, maybe you take a couple shots at Custer, but this season he's got an average finish of 22nd, right on par with Bubba, average running position of 18.5. I just have a hard time seeing Custer be a good play this weekend. Dropping down to Tyler Reddick, $6,900. He's starting at 11th, and I don't think Tyler Reddick's a bad tournament play this week. Now, am I super confident in him for a starting spot? No, but I think the way this track sets up, he can get up near the wall and have a pretty strong run. So he could be like a sneaky top 10 guy. $1,600 doesn't really break the bank, and all the ownership in the world is going to go to Austin Cindric here, which I don't know why he's that low of a price point. So if you want a direct pivot off of Cindric, Tyler Reddick is not a bad option there. I do think he is certainly viable. Austin Cindric, $6,700. He's starting back in 38th. I mean, I don't see how you don't play Cindric. I mean, obviously you're not going to play 100% of him because things can go wrong, and if he finishes 25th, it's kind of like a ho-hum day. Some of these other guys do have plenty of upside as well, but if you're playing cash games this week, just lock in Cindric and don't even worry about it. He's going to be so high on, it's not going to matter if he scores 100 or negative 50 points. But even then, his floor is like, starting 38th would be 0 points? I think his floor is 0, but I'm not going to expect anything to be a wreck fest. But at Kansas, the way Kansas works, in a Penske car, I would be shocked if he doesn't contend for a top 20 finish this time. This should be his best finish of the season, would be my guess. From the races he's ran so far this year, I'd say it's probably the easiest track for him to run. So starting 38th, he can seriously gain you close to 20 spots today, which $6,700. He's typically in the upper 8K range. Now $2,000 cheaper. I mean, just sign me up for all the Cindric I can handle in tournaments and cash games. Ross Chastain, $6,500. He's starting in 24th. Again, not the same driver at all to Kyle Larson, not as talented, but Kyle Larson was very good in this 42 car at Kansas, and Ross Chastain's a driver that's got top 20, top 15 upside in this car, and starting back at 24th at that price point, I think he is totally viable. We can't look at these recent track history numbers because he was an absolute junky equipment. If you look at his numbers this season at 1.5, it's not super impressive, but it's not bad. Average finish of 18th, running position of 19.8, 1 top 15 and 2 top 20s. Starting back in 24th, I think Ross Chastain's a totally viable play down low. Suarez, $6,300. He's starting 21st. Feel like he's a very similar play here to Ross Chastain, and kind of similar to Ross Chastain. We can't look at the recent track history because he's on a different team and different equipment, but the 99 car has been pretty solid this year, and he's actually got very similar numbers to Ross Chastain. I'd prefer Chastain over Suarez because he's starting a few spots. Chastain's starting a few spots further back, so I feel like he's a bit safer, but Suarez and Chastain probably going to finish in the same, kind of in that same finish range this weekend, probably around 15th to 20th place. So I like both. I think they're just fine, cheap plays for the most part. Chris Buescher, $6,100. He's starting back in 16th. This has been an okay track for him. Average finish of 21.2, but he does have a top 10, 2 top 15s, and 2 top 20s. I don't like the starting spot, but so far this year, Buescher's not been bad at the 1.5s. And remember, if you guys, it was either Las Vegas or Homestead, Chris Buescher actually went up front and let some laps for a little bit. Now, that's not something you should expect, but so far this year, he's got an average running position of 12.6 with an average finish of 13.3, averaging 44.4 DraftKings points per race, 3 top 20s, 2 top 15s, and 1 top 10. So, yeah, I can get behind a little bit of Chris Buescher because of the price point. He's got sneaky top 15 potential, and the price is pretty low as well. Chase Briscoe, $6,000. He's starting back in 19th. He has been dreadful this year. Running position of 25th, drive rating of 51.6, which is actually, 37 points lower than Chris Buescher. Average finish of 20.7. He does have a top 20, but man, it's really been hard to trust Chase Briscoe this year, and the Stewart-Haas cars have been absolute junk, so I can't imagine I'll have too much Briscoe. I'll have a little bit, but definitely the only reason I'd have Chase Briscoe is just try to get a little bit different down low because I don't want to go like 100% of guys like Buescher, Suarez, Chastain, so I'm going to want to differentiate myself a little bit. Michael McDowell, $5,800. He's starting in third. He's been good at the 1.5s this year, but I don't really care because he's starting so far up. He's not going to lead laps today. He's going to drop like a rock, so I would not play Michael McDowell. Worst projected driver by far. It's not even close because it's just a crazy starting spot for Michael McDowell. If it was a super speedway, Michael McDowell is always a front runner, but that is not the case this weekend. He could be like a top 20 guy, but that's not going to be enough starting all the way up top in third. Ryan Preece, $5,600, starting 12th. Just again, starting too far up for me. Maybe he can hang around the top 15. He did finish 12th here in the 2019 fall race, so that's what you're kind of hoping for if you play Ryan Preece, but I just don't really see that happening. This season he does have a top 15, which, again, if he can finish top 15, that's not bad starting 12th. You're going to lose a couple place differential points, but I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world because you get some decent finishing position points relative to the other guys in these price range. But definitely wouldn't go there in cash games at all. I wouldn't even consider it. Corey LaJoie, $5,500, starting in 26th. Probably going to finish right around where he starts, so don't really have any high hopes for Corey LaJoie. I mean, so far this season, it's been bad at the 1.5s. He's getting into a little bit of trouble, but running position of 29 is not that great either, so I'm going to have a hard time trusting Corey LaJoie. You might have to play a little bit of him just to make things work up top, but not confident at all in LaJoie this weekend. After LaJoie, we get into the absolute bum group of drivers, and Garrett Smithley, Matt Mills, he's making his first start, starting dead last, so he can't lose you any points. So if you think he's got top 35 upside, you could sprinkle in some Matt Mills. I wouldn't be totally against that just to make some things work down low. Racing for BJ McLeod in the 55 car, I believe that's what it is. Yeah, the 55 car for BJ McLeod Motorsports, which I feel like can be a little bit better than some of these Rick Ware cars, but even then you're just kind of splitting hairs down low here. So Matt Mills, maybe if he doesn't finish dead last, there's this little upside. But if you think he can do a top 35, which it's really hard projecting these drivers down low, but he might be worth just a couple roster spots just in case he picks up a couple spots and a few guys wreck out. Then you get those guaranteed place differential points, but don't expect much here whatsoever. Justin Haley, $5,100, starting 31st. I feel like Haley's playable. One, because of the price point, but starting 31st, he's actually shown a little bit of upside this season at the 1.5s compared to where he's starting and relative to these other drivers, because these other guys, their finishes of 34th, 31st, 35th, 34th, 32nd. He's got an average finish of 20.3 at these track types this year with the running position inside the top 30. And while it's not impressive numbers, it might be somewhat viable down low just to get all those big place differential drivers this weekend. Joey Gase, don't really want to play Joey Gase, BJ McLeod, Cody Ware, Quinn Half. A surprise name you might see down low is the Pasta Man here at $4,500 starting in 22nd, but I hate playing him. He never does well, and I realize $4,500 price below Half, Ware, McLeod, and Gase looks really good, but do you really want to trust that? I feel like he's probably going to lose close to 8-10 spots here. I mean, you guys want to look at the heat map. So let's just say he hits his average finish at the 1.5s this year. Let's say he finishes 25th. It's just the simplest projection ever. Let's say he hits his average finish, maybe even just let's divide these by 2. He finishes 25.5 in this race. It's, again, that's not a lot of too much input there, but let's just go bare bones here and let's see what the points would be for Anthony Alfredo if he happened to finish at his averages this year, which is a small sample size. But so let's say, where's he at? Anthony Alfredo starting 22nd right here. So column number 23. Let's say he finishes in 25th place. That's 14 points. It might work. I mean, I've had some lineups where I play BJ McLeod in the very back. He'll have like 13 to 15 points, and it's actually a decent lineup. Like, I think it was 2 weeks ago at Richmond, BJ McLeod was in my best lineup, and it was actually competing for the win. McLeod had like 17, 16 points, and I think that lineup finished like 5th. So at $4,500, I guess I would understand the play. It's very risky because he could easily finish in the 30s, and you'd get like -1.4 points, which is obviously not going to work. So you got to be very, very careful with Anthony Alfredo. I mean, his car is a little bit better than the ones that are like Joey Gase and Quinn Houff, obviously, but the way he's been driving this year is just really hard to trust Anthony Alfredo, the pasta man. So be careful with Anthony Alfredo exposure. I feel like he's going to have ownership this weekend just because he's that cheap, which I get, because if you play the pasta man, you can easily get in guys like Bowman, Logano, and Larson. It's just, I'm not sure if I want to go that way because it's going to be pretty risky, but I'll probably have a little bit just in case, but those lineups will probably go up into flames shortly when the race starts. But I think with that being said, guys, it's going to be it for the video. So if you made it all the way through, please let me know. It feels like this was a long one, but I just felt like there's a lot to talk about today. So appreciate you listening, and if you haven't already, leave a like on the video if you found it helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment anything you want down below as long as it's nice. I mean, you can say mean things. It just only hurts my feelings a little bit. Just a little bit, then I'll get over it. But yeah, I think that's kind of it. Follow me on Twitter. It's ChrisPennell16, CPen16 over on IG. Gonna help support the channel over on Patreon. Link is down below for that. But wait until Saturday, the beginning of the month. And you can do it on Sunday as well. But beginning of the month's the best time to do it. Projections, which have taken down multiple tournaments so far this season. Optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. Link is down below. But I think that's pretty much it, guys. And I'll see you on the live stream on Sunday around 1 p.m. Eastern. And I'll see you guys in the next time you guys happen to click on one of my videos.